So this is the criteria D and E video where we look at the structure and language of your paper 2 essays. So we'll start with criteria D, and we can really divide this into two things: your organisation, so how you structure your response, and your development. And once again, SL needs to have very good focus, structure and development, and HL you need to have excellent focus, structure and development. So we'll aim the video at excellent. SL, there's no harm in trying to make your work excellent. So the first thing that you need to do is plan. My class are sick of hearing me say my old favourite phrase, which is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You get 5 minutes reading time for your paper 2, so use that to read the six questions and start thinking then, once you've chosen your question, about how you're going to approach it. When you then get time to write, use 15 to 20 minutes to think about the question, the different parts of the question, and start writing down your ideas. Okay, so the way that I like to structure a paper 2 essay, it may not be your cup of tea, but I think it's really good advice in showing that you can balance your essay between the two texts. Also, it helps with the answering the question as well, is to think of big chunkies, and the big chunkies will be what you compare your two texts under, and then your mini chunkies are what you say under those big chunkies in reference to each text. May sound really confusing, but I'll talk you through that now. So through this video, for structure, I'm going to focus on this question. So looking closely at how weakness and strength are represented in at least two works you have studied, discuss the significance of the relationship between the two. So instantly, this is a question of two parts. If you've watched the criteria B video, you will know that you can either get a one-part question, or often there's two parts to it, and this is a two-parter. So the first thing it's asking you to look at is how weakness and strength are represented as two separate things, and then the relationship between the two. So I'm going to brainstorm some of my ideas about weakness and strength in 1984. So I feel like both weakness and strength are shown through the rebellious love of Julia and Winston. It gives them strength as a couple, but ultimately makes them weak when they betray each other in Room 101. The oppressive systems, i.e. Big Brother, and the media and things like that, and eradication of the past, makes the citizens weak, and that is the strength of Big Brother there. The class system that is explored in terms of the proles, the inner party and the outer party, and also the innocence of youth, how the youth who are portrayed as weak normally in society are actually used as a means of strength for Big Brother. And so actually what we've done there with these ideas, when we've thought about weakness and strength, we have ended up thinking about this part, which is the significance between the two. So that's always good. And then in The God of Small Things, we've also got rebellious love in the form of Amu and Velutha, and how that gives them strength as individuals, but particularly Velutha, because he comes from a place of weakness, more so than Amu. And then actually again it leads to their downfall. The class system in India at the time, with the untouchables, again makes citizens weak, but the strength of that class system ultimately dictates society. And we've got the innocence of youth as well, making certain characters strong Rahel and Esther become strong together in their innocence, but when that innocence is destroyed, they then become weak. So what's good about this brainstorm, and I'm not saying that it will be this easy in your exam depending on the question, but again, watch the Criteria B video if you want to explore different types of questions and how to do this with different types. This is just about structuring. So when I now think about my structure, I can look at similarities and differences here, and I can see things that can definitely be put together, basically all three of these. So they're going to form my big chunkies, which will look at how weakness and strength are represented. But of course we've got the second part of the question. So I know that it's not enough to talk about how weakness and strength are represented in my big chunkies. I need to also look at how the changes of power happen in each theme. So that's what we're going to do. So now that we've got our main ideas, we need to look at what makes a good big chunky and a good mini chunky. So we've got our question there again, and I'm going to focus on one of the themes that we picked, which is love. And so I'm going to have my main topic sentence, or as I like to call it, a big chunky, as both Roy and Orwell use the theme of the strength of love leading to an eventual downfall to the character's power. No, that doesn't really make grammatical sense. Sorry, I wrote this when I was very tired. Both Roy and Orwell use the theme of the strength of power which leads. Sorry about that, guys. To an eventual downfall in the character's power. And what we've done there, the reason why that is in pink, is because we have shown how weakness and strength are represented through that theme. So we've said the strength of love, but also the characters become weak as a result of that. So we've hit this part in our big chunky. But obviously we know that there's two parts to the question, and that's when our mini chunkies come in. So our mini chunkies should give more detail specifically to the text in terms of the big chunky, but also then explore the second part of the question. So my mini chunky for the God of Small Things under this main topic sentence is, in the God of Small Things, Amu and Velutha's love for each other gives them strength, but ultimately is not strong enough to withstand the power of the enforced rules that govern the Indian caste system, resulting in both characters becoming powerless victims. So we have used this part to explore the relationship, and we've used this part to be more specific about this idea of love. I hope that makes sense. And then our mini chunky for 1984 will be, similarly, Julia and Winston's love makes them feel a sense of strength against the party. However, we again see, like in the God of Small Things, that this love is not strong enough to withstand the strength of Big Brother and results in both characters becoming weak, brainwashed citizens. So again, we've been more specific about the love part, which in our big chunky, we explained how that shows weakness and strength. And then we use the second part of our mini topic sentence to link to the second part of the question, so showing the relationship between the two. And we make sure these mini chunkies are really specific to the text, because obviously they're introducing that paragraph for that text. So the second thing then we need to do is how do we show development of a sustained argument. So we've got hopefully a big chunky, a big topic sentence that introduces one theme for both texts. We've got our mini topic sentences, our mini chunkies that introduce a theme or that go into more detail of that theme for both texts. And what they should do is give a thesis statement. So if I just go back to these, we know that it's a thesis statement because it's giving an argument. And we know that because it uses really high modality, so it gives them strength, but is ultimately not strong enough. That's our thesis for The God of Small Things. And our thesis for the 1984 paragraph is that their love makes them feel a sense of strength, however it's not strong enough. So that's our thesis for both paragraphs. So what we need to do in order to show development is to support that argument with our evidence, and that is what it means by showing development. Obviously it kind of means writing enough as well, so you need to make sure you write enough. But using your thesis statements of your mini chunkies to guide your paragraphs. So I've written the paragraphs out for you, and hopefully you can see how that argument is developed by the evidence. I'm not going to read them out to you because you're probably sick of hearing my voice, but you can pause the video now and read them for yourself. So if you have paused, you will have read them, and again this links to criteria B quite a lot, but you will see that throughout we've used the same kind of wording that we have in the thesis to show that we are developing our argument. So for example, continually oppressing those of the lowest caste with any power at all. And then we also have how they weaken the initial strength these characters may have had. Again, you might want to watch the criteria C video because we talk about how step 3 of our analysis of quotes should be the one that links to your thesis to explain how that evidence supports your argument. And again here we've got our stage 3 of analysis, strength in a society where Big Brother is the dominant and usually violent ruler. Big Brother is weak in the face of love. And again, our stage 3 of analysis for this piece of evidence is now weak and separated. The power, strong, strength. So hopefully you've seen there how we use stage 3 of analysis to link to our thesis, our topic sentence, and we are showing development of an argument in that way. Just a side note as well, if you do have a big chunky, say that it was about love, you don't have to have both of the kind of text showing the same thing in terms of love. You can say, you can make your big chunky a bit vaguer and just say the theme of love to show power, And say if you were using a text where love does result in the characters having more power, then you would just use a different connective there that kind of shows a different sense. But you can still have the same theme as your big chunky. So the third thing that students need to do in order to show a solid, if not excellent, organisation in their essays is writing an introduction with a clear argument that lays out what you're going to talk about. Now, we've done a bit of work in our lessons about how to write introductions, and these are the main things. I'm going to read this introduction out to you, and then we can have a look how these tips here are shown in this introduction. So again, we're keeping with this same question, and also remember the big chunkies that we got from our plan. So you can write a really effective introduction once you've planned your big chunkies in that planning time. So, set in a strict Indian society, many characters in The God of Small Things are weakened by the strength of the unwritten rules and systems that are in place. Under the oppressive ruling of the totalitarian Big Brother, Winston feels he is too weak to overthrow such a strong and omnipotent government. Both The God of Small Things and Adamrati's Adamrati, I really can't say her name, I'm so sorry, I'll just say Roy's debut novel, which adopts techniques of a Bildungsroman to track the lives of two twins, Rahul and Esther, in Kerala, India, and 1984, George Orwell's classic dystopian fiction, which depicts the protagonist Winston Smith trying to rebel against the totalitarian state of Big Brother, show characters trying to find strength in societies where they are considered powerless. All the characters in The God of Small Things are forced to find strength in other people, but inevitably lose all power as a result of the strict Indian caste system. Similarly, Winston Smith tries to assert his power over Big Brother through his rebellious acts, but is eventually weakened by the strength of the regime. Both novels explore how the restrictions of love, the innocence of youth, and a strict class system are used to keep certain members of society weak, whilst others remain in a position of strength. Okay, so that's our introduction that we've written after we've planned, and we're going to go through why it's a good introduction. So the use of subordinate clauses. Now you will notice here and here start with subordinate clauses, which means that it is only after the comma that the main clause comes. And that's a really good writing style because it kind of prolongs the point, which I know goes against what I often say to my class about waffle and get straight to the point. But in this case, it's really nice because it kind of builds up tension to what you want to say. So it's a really nice device to use. It's also a really good way of adding more information, and you can see that in the Criteria A video, the use of subordinate clauses to just make sure that you're adding extra knowledge like this, the strict Indian society, and under the oppressive ruling of the totalitarian Big Brother. We are instantly showing that we know these novels. So subordinate clauses are really good. Noun phrases as well, we go through that in the Criteria A video. I do these in pink, I like pink. Just trying to fit as many nouns in as possible to make sure you're showing your knowledge. Like particularly here, Adranhati. Yeah, there we go. I can say it. Adranhati. Like full names, dates, places, characters, technical vocabulary, totalitarian state of Big Brother, Winston Smith, all these things. We're adding noun upon noun upon noun just to show that we know those, the novels really, really well. Just add information as much as you can. And that's a really good thing to do in your introduction particularly. I mean, it's the opening of your essay, so you want the examiner to be impressed by your knowledge. Equally, it means that you don't have to kind of then repeat it when the focus shifts to more analysis later on in the essay. High modality is really good. It makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. It makes you sound sure, and it's also a really good way of creating a thesis statement, which links to the 5th bullet point. So, he tries to assert his power over Big Brother through his rebellious acts, but is eventually weakened by the strength of the regime. We are saying that with high modality. We sound certain. We're not doubting our assumptions, and we're not doubting what we're trying to say. Equally, in this part, which is the main thesis, we sound certain. We know what we're talking about, and we know what we're going to say in our essay. We need to show balance across the whole essay, and that's another thing that comes under organisation. Make sure that you address both of the texts in equal kind of measure. So you need to show equality to both of the texts you are talking about. But you will notice that we've got parallelism in terms of our sentence structures all the way through this introduction. So we've got similar sentence structures here. Then we address both of the novels and give embedded clauses as well to give extra information. So if I just highlight the embedded clauses, so both The God of Small Things, extra information, and 1984, extra information. Show characters trying to find strength. So even when we're giving extra information, we've balanced it. All the characters in The God of Small Things. We then have another sentence that is just directly about one text, but that's followed by another sentence that talks about the other text. So just make sure you show balance throughout your essay, but also in your introduction. And ensure that every detail that you give refers to the question. There's no point giving pointless information about a text that isn't important to what you're going to say about it. So instantly we've got weakened by the strength and feels he is too weak to overthrow such a strong government. And then we don't need to link to the question necessarily when we're given the details about the text, but then we come straight back and say characters trying to find strength in societies where they're considered powerless, linked to the question. Forced to find strength in other people but lose all power. His power weakened by the strength. And then obviously in our thesis statement, that's where it's most important. Certain members of society are weak, whilst others remain in a position of strength. So make sure you link to the question all throughout. Every detail needs to be relevant to what you're saying about that question. Okay. So that's introductions. So then we've got criteria E. Again, you'll be familiar with this one because it's across all of your IB assessments. So how clear, varied and accurate is the language? How appropriate is the choice of register, style and terminology? And that doesn't really change through any of your assessed pieces for the IB. But here it gives specifics about what register means. So register, can you make it sound like a formal essay? And HL you can celebrate here because this is the only criteria where it's the same for SL and HL. And if you don't believe me, you can have a look yourself, it's right there. So, I'm not going to spend too long on this criteria because obviously you need to have a good mastery of the English language, and sadly, if I could teach that in one video, I would be a very rich woman, but I can't. But this is just going to show you how you can make little changes to your writing style to boost your mark for the language. So, the key thing is to use as much technical vocabulary as possible. Don't say things like book and story. A book is just what the format that it has been published in. I mean, I read a lot of things on the Kindle, not really a book, so don't use that. Story is just a bit basic, so say things like novel or graphic novel. Just make sure you're really specific about that. And you can even take it further. So, Bildungsroman, things like that. For Persepolis or for 1984, you can have dystopian fiction. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, there we go, got there eventually. Dystopian fiction, etc. So just really try and boost your technical vocabulary as much as possible. So word and quote, my class will know these are pet peeves of mine. And if you want to hear more about how to boost not using the word or the word quote, you can watch the Criteria B video. But basically, you should be giving techniques when you're saying this. Please don't say things like, Winston uses the word, blah, blah, blah. And definitely don't say quote, because authors don't quote things. You are quoting the authors, but the authors don't quote. So you can't say Orwell's use of the quote, because that's not accurate. And just try to be as accurate as possible. So I'm seeing a lot of the Big Brother. It's not. It's Big Brother. And things like the Society of 1984. Well, you would say the Society of Oceania in 1984. So just make sure you're getting things like that correct. Also, authors' names. I know I couldn't say one earlier, but luckily it's not your IOC. But make sure you know the spellings. I'm seeing a lot of Winston being called Wilson. I don't know whether to take that as a compliment because he's a rebel, but or maybe I've just got ulcers. I don't know. But yeah, make sure you get the names of people correct and dates and things like that. And places, names of places, very important. So anyway, I hope that's helped with criteria D and E, and feel free to watch the other videos to put more of this video into context. Thanks.